Welcome to WikiPodcast.
Great to be diving into another topic.
Yeah, and today it's something pretty fundamental, really. We're looking at betrayal and trust.
Mm.
And that big question, after you've been deeply betrayed, can you actually truly heal?
It's a tough one. We've all probably wondered about it at some point.
So this deep dive, we're going to unpack the psychology behind it all. You know, the impact, how you might rebuild trust, or maybe how you just move forward.
And we'll dig into what betrayal even means because it's not always clear-cut. There are some really interesting psychological ideas around it.
Absolutely. It really does strike at the heart of how we connect, doesn't it?
It does. And the first thing you notice when you look into it is, well, nailing down a single definition of betrayal. It's tricky.
Right. It's fascinating that some thinkers, Judith Schrar and Peter Johnson, for instance, they basically suggest looking at literature.
Like stories show it best.
Exactly. They argue the real essence is in the nuances of how it happens in people's lives, not some rigid definition.
Which kind of makes sense intuitively. You know it when you feel it.
Totally.
But then you've got others, like Roger L. Jackson, who push for something more solid.
Okay.
He argues it's not just, a people problem or hurt feelings. There's a philosophical need to distinguish real betrayal from just feeling betrayed.
Ah, okay. So, is it an actual violation or just a misunderstanding or disappointment?
Precisely. And he thinks that distinction is crucial for figuring out how to handle it in real life.
That really clicks. It's the difference between feeling let down and, a fundamental shattering of trust.
And Ben Yehuda adds another layer, using loyalty, trust, and moral boundaries as the key elements.
So those are the things that get broken.
Basically, yeah. He sees them as the common threads, the foundation that gets damaged no matter how the betrayal happens, relationship, team, even with an institution.
And the fallout. It affects everyone involved.
Yeah, definitely. The sources talk about this sort of constellation of negative stuff, behaviors, thoughts, feelings, hitting both the victim and the perpetrator.
So it's like a real tangle of pain.
Yeah, and you often see this pattern. The victim feels this intense anger, naturally maybe wants some kind of apology or repair.
Makes sense.
And the person who did the betraying, they might feel guilt, shame, maybe even real remorse, but if the victim's anger stays really high, goes on and on even after attempts to apologize, it can actually backfire.
How so?
The perpetrator can end up getting defensive, maybe even angry themselves. It becomes this really painful cycle.
Wow, yeah, that sounds emotionally exhausting.
Yeah.
And this idea that for the victim, acceptance means eventually letting go of demanding constant apologies or replaying the event.
Yeah, not dwelling on it constantly.
That feels like a huge step.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult.
It's key for healing, but it takes a lot internally. And critically, the sources really stress that for any chance of moving forward together, there has to be a genuine apology, one that shows real remorse and, importantly, a plan for change from the person who did the betraying.
A plan for change. That seems vital.
Without that, rebuilding trust is pretty much off the table.
And that connects to the second assault idea, which really stood out to me.
Oh, yes.
When the betrayer just dismisses your feelings, minimizes it.
It just pours salt in the wound, doesn't it? It invalidates your whole reality of the situation.
It makes healing so much harder.
Absolutely. And in those cases, where there's no validation, no sign of change, well, going no contact, ending the connection, is presented as a totally valid option.
A way to protect yourself when change seems unlikely.
Exactly. But what if you don't go no contact? What if you try to stay connected?
Right. The material mentions that too. It's possible, but risky.
Yeah, the risk of it happening again is real. It's like you have to acknowledge the pattern exists.
So you might stay connected, but maybe pull back a bit.
Yeah.
Limit your vulnerability.
That's the idea. Maybe you don't share certain things anymore, if that's where the trust was broken. It's about self-preservation within that changed relationship.
Okay, let's shift to betrayal trauma. This sounds deeper than the initial hurt.
It is. Research suggests it can look a lot like PTSD, symptom-wise, but with some key differences, like potentially more amnesia around the event, more dissociation.
Amnesia? Really? Forgetting the betrayal. How does that work?
Well, the theory is when the betrayal comes from someone you rely on, someone close, the sheer intensity of the anger, the violation of that core trust, it can trigger these coping mechanisms. It's overwhelming.
So it's different from typical PTSD, which is often linked more to like intense fear.
Right. Traditional PTSD doesn't necessarily involve that trusted relationship being the source of the trauma. Betrayal trauma has that specific violation of trust by someone depended upon right at its center. That seems to shape the response differently.
Okay, that distinction is important. The broken trust itself is key.
Yeah.
Now, thinking about romance, John Gottman, he's famous for relationship research.
Oh, yeah, Gottman, he has a lot to say here.
He sees betrayal as this noxious invader.
Yeah, something that just poisons the relationship from the inside out. He even came up with a betrayal metric.
Based on sacrifice.
Kind of, yeah. It looks at how willing a partner is to make sacrifices for the other person, for the good of the relationship itself.
And if they're not willing...
He found that a consistent unwillingness to prioritize the partner or the relationship, well, it was a pretty strong predictor of things like affairs or other major betrayals down the line.
Wow, that's a powerful thought. And his examples of betrayal in relationships, they go beyond just cheating, right?
Oh, definitely. It's a much broader picture. Things like only being committed when things are good.
Conditional commitment. Yeah.
Emotional affairs, constant lying, even seemingly small lies, ganging up on your partner with other people.
Forming coalitions, okay.
Just being emotional absent, disrespectful, unfair, selfish, even breaking important promises. It really shows all the ways trust can get chipped away.
So many ways. Okay, let's switch gears again. Double cross. Sounds like spy movie stuff.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it kind of does. But basically it means deceiving someone by, well, double dealing. You betray one agreement after already betraying someone else or some other principle.
And the origin is literally crossing someone in a contest. Like fixing a game and then breaking the fix.
That's the idea, yeah. Tricking someone after you'd already agreed on something dodgy.
And that Jonathan Wild story.
Yeah.
Him keeping a list. Probably not true.
Seems more like legend. Adds drama, but maybe not historically accurate.
Gotcha.
But the term double cross definitely took hold later. And it gets used in a couple of interesting ways. One is exactly that scenario.
Yeah.
You're supposed to throw a game or race, but you actually compete, honestly, double-crossing the fixers.
Okay.
The other, maybe more classic sense, is playing two opposing sides against each other. You pretend to help each one, but you're really setting them both up to fail, so you benefit.
Ah, like the double cross system in World War II, feeding bad info.
Exactly. That's a huge real-world example of manipulating opposing sides through deception.
Layered deception for your own game. Okay, final concept. Betrayal blindness. This seems really relevant to healing or not healing.
It really is. Betrayal blindness is essentially unawareness, not knowing, or even actively forgetting that a betrayal happened or is happening.
It's not always conscious.
Often not, no. It's more like a psychological defense mechanism kicking in.
And this came out of Freud's betrayal trauma theory.
That's right. Freud and others like Burrell built on this. They realized betrayal blindness isn't just for, huge, obvious traumas. It can happen with things like adultery or even subtler power imbalances or unfairness in relationships.
So you could be betrayed and literally not know it.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're the one doing the betraying and you're blind to it.
Exactly. And it's not just victims. Perpetrators can be blind to their own actions, and even witnesses, bystanders, might exhibit it.
Why would witnesses do that?
To preserve things. To protect their own relationships, their connection to maybe an institution, or just the social systems they rely on. It can be a way to keep things feeling stable, even if that stability is, well, built on denial.
Which brings us to institutional betrayal.
Right, where the institution itself, the one people depend on, fails them. Fails to prevent harm or fails to respond properly when bad things happen within it.
The institution becomes blind. Or maybe even complicit.
Yes, either actively covering up or passively just not dealing with known problems. And the impact on the individuals relying on that institution can be devastating.
Wow. This whole deep dive really shows how complex betrayal is. It's not just one thing, and the impact is just huge. Psychologically, emotionally.
Absolutely. And as we touched on, rebuilding that broken trust, it's incredibly difficult, whether it's romance, friendship, or even trust in, bigger systems.
Yeah, it's a massive undertaking.
So we've looked at the challenge of defining it, the fallout for everyone, specific thing called betrayal trauma, how it plays out in romance, the whole double cross idea, and this fascinating concept of betrayal blindness.
So thinking about that betrayal blindness, it seems like a major roadblock to healing or even just acknowledging the problem. What are some maybe practical ways individuals or even institutions could start becoming more aware? How can we get better at addressing these breaches of trust?
That's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? It has to start with a real commitment to honest communication, I think. And being willing to hear and validate someone's experience, even if it makes us uncomfortable.
Yeah, not just dismissing it.
Right. And consciously trying to see our own blind spots, both as individuals and within the groups or systems we're part of. It takes active effort.
It really does. A lot to think about there.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for listening. Write us your opinion in the comments on how you believe individuals can begin to recognize and overcome betrayal blindness in their own lives and relationships. Subscribe to the channel to help more listeners reach our episodes. Thank you, and have an amazing day.